Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. In this podcast, I'm going to break down the most puzzling players league wide as determined by the Apples and Ginos Discord server. Let's get it. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. It is a little bit different here today. I am coming to you live from the road. Real job intruding on fantasy hockey once again. What can you do? But needed to get this out and needed to make this live stream happen. So that's what we're going to do. Let me know if the audio is too weird. I'm using a headset and it's not the greatest thing in the world, but I tried to kind of keep it away from my mouth, so hopefully it's not popping in your ears too badly or anything. But let me know if anything is up with the audio. I did do some tests, and I think it's going to work out okay. But let me know in the comments if we got any issues, and we'll figure it out together. But we are going to talk about a bunch of puzzling players. Sounds like the audio is all good. Thanks for that. And it looks like we've got tons of comments in here. I think we should just go ahead and get started, though, with the most puzzling player of the week as determined by the Apples and Ginos Discord server, and that's Dylan Holloway. Now, Holloway, I have it on my phone in front of me. I'm dealing with less screens. I'm currently hooked up to the TV in the hotel room that I'm doing this from, and that's what I'm putting up on the screen for you. So it's a bit of a setup that I've got going on, that's for sure. But I did see that Dylan Holloway did score a goal already in the game here, his sixth of the season. So we can add that to these stats, which are obviously pulled from before the game started today. But in his last five before today, he had a goal and an assist for a couple of points, just over 60 and a half minutes average time on ice. 251 shots per 60, 100th in individual scoring chances for per 60, but down at 213th in individual expected goals for per 60 and 169th in on ice expected goals for per 60. Holloway has definitely had a tough start to the season. There's really no two ways about that. This game currently is playing on a line with Jordan Kyrou and Pia Suter. And yeah, it's definitely not what I had envisioned for Holloway myself when I had drafted him in multiple leagues and really been touting him as a potential huge win at your draft table. And the ice time trending down is obviously a concern, as is the 19 goal, 37 point pace on the season. That being said, we've seen the hot streak from him before, and that included underlying metrics really coming up to a significant degree. And it's not just Holloway that's cold either, right? It's a whole team situation, so he's not getting any boost from the team. It would have been nice to see him take another step and be able to be the catalyst kind of on his own, even if the teammates weren't going, but it doesn't appear that that's the case, and maybe we can't fault him for that just yet. The issue, of course, at hand is what do we do with Dylan Holloway moving forward? In more points heavy, like anything towards points only, I think you can move on from Dylan Holloway if you haven't already. In anything with bangers, though, Dylan Holloway does that. He's definitely a guy who will throw the body around and get involved. So in the spots where I have him, in my Bangers Cats League. I mean, over the last 5 games, he's registered 4 hits, 1, 3, 6, and 2 already, and 9:56 of ice time in this game here today. So he's still doing that at the very least. I think that that's valuable in some leagues, so if that's the case in your league, you definitely don't have to move on. I still think there's a lot of potential with Holloway, but it's getting harder and harder to wait on anybody really in St. Louis because it's starting to feel like this season is going off the rails a little bit, and I don't know if they're going to get it back or they might level out to some degree, and maybe that's good enough for Dylan Holloway to take another step and move into that 55-ish point range. But I had a bigger projection for him. I think I had him for maybe 63 points, if I'm remembering correctly, at the beginning of the year. I definitely think you'd have to adjust that down given the information that we have about the team situation and his play so far in the season. So long spiel on Dylan Holloway there, but it was the most puzzling player as defined by the Discord community, so I wanted to do it justice. Let's keep moving on and talk about Nico Hischier. He's got 3 goals and 5 points in his last 5 before tonight's game, and unless things have changed again, it doesn't look like it. He's already got a goal and an assist in this one. Over 21 and a half minutes average time on ice. With Jack Hughes out of the picture, Nico Hischier is going to get leaned on a lot. I did see he got briefly injured in the game here tonight and then came back. Could be a little banged up, which would potentially be a problem moving forward, but hopefully he's okay. He was penalty killing afterwards, I saw, so hopefully that means he's just fine and it was just a bit of a stinger. But the underlying metrics on Nico Hischier have really come up huge in the last little bit, and that's very, very encouraging. The problem that I was having with Nico Hischier, and I wasn't really doing anything about it, but I was concerned about it, was the fact that the underlying metrics were so bad for such a long time with Hischier, which is not really something that we would ever suspect about Hischier. He's one of the more consistent players across the league, but this year it just wasn't working for him for whatever reason. But now in the last 5 games, 46 shots per 60, 5th individual scoring chances 4 per 60, 21st individual expected goals 4 per 60, and 23rd in on ice expected goals 4 per 60, and the puck's finally going in the net. That's got to be a relief for him, a relief for the team. And you look up, he's on a 23 goal, 62 point pace at this point in the season, and that's with a 55% IPP, 11.9% on ice shooting percentage, 12.5% individual shooting percentage. None of those metrics are on the high side, and if anything, they're on the low side, especially that IPP. So I do think that we should get even more from Hischier, especially if he's able to keep up these underlying metrics as of late. If you still could buy low on Hischier, which is pretty unlikely, I'm assuming after this recent outburst, then I would still do it. But it seems like we're just going to be happy with where we have Nico Hischier. If you were following me at any point throughout the offseason, you probably know that I was a pretty big Hischier proponent. I thought he was a really safe option and was going to be pretty helpful in a lot of fantasy contexts. I have him on a couple of teams as well, and I hadn't been enjoying the ride until recently, but it's nice to see him break out of the slump and do it in a way that looks pretty sustainable. Next up is Braden Point, and Braden Point is currently injured, missing this game here on Monday evening for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But in the 5 games prior, just 2 assists, no goals, under 18 minutes average time on ice. 54th in individual expected goals 4 per 60 is nice. 26th in on ice expected goals 4 per 60 is nice. But where are the results? That's the big thing here for sure. And it's hard to say the reason exactly for Braden Point's issues so far. Certainly the underlying numbers there make it seem like he's probably going to be okay in the near future. If he hadn't incurred this injury, now we have a whole nother set of circumstances to kind of deal with, is what happens when he comes back, how healthy is he going to be when he comes back, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely a tough spot to be. It felt like he might have been starting to come out of it. Even the game prior to the game where he got injured, he had 5 shots on goal, skated over 20 minutes, didn't score any points, but those were some good things happening for Braden Point in that game. Then comes out the next game, gets injured, and we'll have to see where it goes from here. Overall, I think it might be a good buy low spot on Braden Point, but it's not without risk at this point, and more so to do with the injury than anything to be scared of with Braden Point himself, in my mind. I viewed Point pretty similarly to Nico Hischier, pretty safe. Not the guy who's going to pop off for huge shot totals, and maybe not a huge goal total this year either, given the current construction, how little he's been shooting in the early on. but still safe for at least a point per game and probably closer to 90 points in an average season for him. So I still think that that's definitely possible as a point pace from here on out, but definitely there's a bit more risk given this injury and the potential of something that could linger a little bit. We don't have the greatest information, but you do have to take that into account. Overall, I do think Braden Point is a buy low, but not necessarily a screaming buy low, as I might have said before the injury. Rob Thomas next up, 1 goal, 4 points in his last 5 games. I haven't checked to see. It was just the 1 goal for the Blues so far, and he did not get in on that, the Holloway goal there. Over 19 minutes average time on ice, 285th shots per 60, 289th individual expected goals for per 60. He doesn't really do that. That's not something he's known for. But the on-ice stuff doesn't look much better. 261st in on-ice expected goals for per 60 is Braden Point, and that's just a tough place for this guy to be. It should be so much better for him. And again, it comes down to the team situation where nothing seems to be working for St. Louis in general. And it's hard to see a path where it just like suddenly the switch flips and everything's perfect again and they're back to that unbelievable run they had at the end of last year. That just doesn't seem like the most likely outcome at this point in time. And so what is the kind of lesser expectations version of Rob Thomas for this year? It might be a bit more of the 75-ish points with obviously not a lot of goals and a lot more assists. So it's a little bit more watered down than we were hoping for with Rob Thomas. Does he still have potential to get back up there? Obviously he does. We've seen it. But I think you have to take what you've seen into account when evaluating Rob Thomas rest of season. Dylan Guenther is the 5th one, and then we'll get into some comments here. He's got 2 goals, no assists in his last 5 games, 17 minutes average time on ice. It's a tough spot for Dylan Guenther rosterers like myself. They've done some interesting stuff as of late trying to get him going. They put Michael Carconi on the line with Guenther and Cooley trying to get them going in a different setup. And it's not like Guenther himself is playing poorly. You get the 12th in shots per 60, 38th individual expected goals for per 60, but 102nd in on ice expected goals for per 60 and only 17 minutes average time on ice. And this is a bit of a movie we've seen before where it just doesn't seem like Andre Torini is necessarily willing to let Guenther just be that true top line talent that everybody in the fantasy community thinks he can be. And that's going to hold down his production. He's on a 30 goals, 56 point pace. I think he could do a little better than that. I think that's definitely possible. You see the 58% IPP. I think that could go up. I think the 10.5% shooting percentage could go up. So he could be getting more of a 35 to 40 goal scorer with a 65-ish point pace as a bit better of a baseline. But it's a tough look for Utah. They were on fire early on, and everything just seems to have fallen apart in quick order here. And I think that things are going to get better. If you're using the Apples and Ginos player evaluation tool, which is available to Apples and Ginos patron members, then you could go to this 5-team game played tab, the team XG tab rather, and you can see that Utah's underlying stats are actually quite good. The 5v5 stuff looks quite good, both recently, last 5 games, and on the season. They're generating a lot of expected goals. In the last 5 games, it's maybe a little bit down, a little bit more towards the middle of the pack, but overall in the season, they're 7th in all strengths team expected goals for. So it's a good environment still. I think it's just gone a little bit quiet here, and they're going to have to, as a young team, figure out a way forward here. And I think they will. I think they're too talented not to. I do think this is probably a bit of a buy low spot for Dylan Guenther. That being said, he's been one of the most hypey players in fantasy hockey throughout most of his young career here, so I don't know if you're going to be able to swing a deal for him, but it's at least worth kicking tires in my opinion. All right, let's get back to some comments. Don't think I'm going to be able to get to all the comments here, but I will do my best. I'll go back to here. Lost One says, I feel like I'm getting interviewed by this handsome lad. It could be an interview. We could call it that. We got random reviews in here. Good to see you. Tofu Tomo, what's up, Nate? Got offered Brat for my Barzal in a points league, yay or nay? That's a good question. We do have Barzal on the list, and his underlying numbers are looking pretty good. Brat, I think, is doing pretty well as of late. I'm going to add him here just so we can kind of do a little side by side. He's got, I'll scroll up so we can see it, 5 assists in the last 5. I believe he's got some points in the game here tonight for New Jersey as well. Underlying numbers are looking really good for Jesper Bratt. So I think I would take Bratt here. I think the baseline is maybe a little safer there. But I think they're relatively comparable. The Islanders being way more offensive than anybody gave them credit for is pretty interesting. But I do think you go for Brett there. But it's not as much of a slam dunk as I would have said at the beginning of the season, that's for sure. Cody wants to know how the Canadian Idol tryouts went. I guess that's to do with the headset we're going with here. Not so great. Yeah, my singing days are in the rearview mirror, I think. Random Reviews is OEL for real? Can he be a season-long hold? I don't think he's a season-long hold, but I think he's actually relatively valuable right now because of all the injuries that the Leafs are dealing with on defense. You get McCabe getting dinged up there over the weekend as well, and they really can't afford to lose any more defensemen at this point. So OEL is going to get probably 22, 23 minutes a night pretty consistently here, and some power play time to go with it, and he can do something with that. It's not going to be, not going to knock your socks off, but it's going to probably be worth something. Brad asks, how would you rank Destu, Furry, Rinzel, points only, 1 defensive point awarded when an NHL team allows 2 goals against or less, 17 team, 16-man rosters in our 47th season? That is quite the scenario. 1 defensive point allowed when the team allows 2 goals or less. That's a pretty interesting one. I think in that case, maybe you go with Martin Feruvri. If you know, you know, I guess. But yeah, I think that might be a spot to go with him. It's an interesting setup. I've never seen that one before. Congrats on your 47th season. That's awesome. Banger Cats, looking at including either Holloway or Guenther in a 2-for-1 trade. Who would you rather keep rest of season? That would be Guenther for me. Hi Nate, I traded Morgan Riley for Ehlers in Bangers Cats League. My other D are Yossi, Jones, Makar, Radish. Do you approve? I'm into it. Hey Nate, this is from Brutal Wolf. Love the content, keep it up. In Points League, would you give Gensel and Goss to spare for Keller and Lacombe? I guess it would probably matter what the settings are a little bit. Gensel is playing out of his mind. Just looks so good. Despite the fact that Kucherov and Point have not been so great this year, Gensel has been absolutely flying. I think I still would. A lot of that is my belief in Lacombe and a little bit of disbelief for Shane Goss to spare, even though he's been getting more minutes as of late. I think I would probably do the deal, but it's not as much of a dunk as I would have said even 2 or 3 weeks ago. Which goalie for wins, saves, goals against average, and shutouts? Vladar, Comrie, Lankinen. It's a good question. I think it's between Vladar and Comrie for me. Vladar's been playing quite well. I'm pretty into him as a hold at the moment. Comrie should get a fair amount of starts here on a solid defensive team there in Winnipeg. Yeah, it's almost a coin flip for me between Vladar and Comrie. I guess I would probably default to the team I think is going to do a little bit better, which would be Winnipeg in this case, but it's definitely not a slam dunk. Kucherov 2 assists tonight. Was Point the problem? I don't think so. I think they just got cold. It happens to even the best players at times. Which goalie... Oh, this is the same question. Just adding Binnington. I wouldn't take Binnington over Comrie or Vladar. I look different. Hopefully, it's a good improvement. Yeah, I had a wild day at work. We're launching some software for a customer, and I had to do the early shift, and so I woke up at 2:30 a.m. this morning. So it's been a bit of a long day here, but yeah. It's good to talk fantasy hockey at the end of all of it, that's for sure. The Trevster picked up Cousins in place of Point for now. Have had Pinto all season. Is it worth keeping both or dropping one for a stream spot? Those three, my only natural centers. Then Draisaitl, 12 team, typical points league scoring. So for this week, Ottawa has the best schedule, so I would keep both for this week, but probably after that I'd want to choose. So give them this week. They're both going to play all week for you. Play on the Sunday, the off night on Sunday this week. Keep them for this week, see how they do, and make your decision on Sunday based on what happens this week. Hi Nate, would you keep Demidov in a 10-man head-to-head points league? 6 points for a goal, 4 for an assist, 2 for plus minus. Oh my. 1 for penalty minute, 2 for power play point, 1 for shorthanded goal, 0.5 for, I believe that's a SHA. Oh, shorthanded assist. I was going to say, is that a shot? Shorthanded assist, gotcha. 1 for game winner, 1 point for a shot on goal, huge shots on goal weight as well, 0.5 for a hit, 1 for a block. Notable free agents are Terry, Svech, Cooley, Kreider, Hyman. In that setup, it's pretty banger heavy. Yeah, it's between Svechnikov and Terry for me. The banger heaviness has me potentially going for Svechnikov in this setup. Now, that being said, like the shorthanded points, Terry's playing a lot of shorthanded time this year. Svechnikov is top line, top power play, and has been for a minute now. Interesting one. I would probably, yeah, because of the banger weighting, I think I might go Svechnikov here. Interesting one for sure. David, hey Nate, deep league at D. Who do you like as my last D between Letang, Power, and Weegar? Scoring is goals equals assist only with no periffs. Letang, Power, and Weegar in points only. Yeah, it's not an easy answer. I think they're in the right tier. It's a good question because they're all relatively similar. I think it's between Letang and Weegar for me. I think Pittsburgh is actually generating more offense, so I might just go with Letang for the environment. Yeah, I think Letang for points only. Final answer. Puck said, how do you rank Sandheim, Orlov, Letang, Ekholm, ASP, Lindholm, Gudas? For right now, out of that group, I think I would have Lindholm first. Power play 1 in Boston for as long as McAvoy is out, most likely. Chance that Lowry overtakes him, but again, then at that point, you could just move on to the next guy. Probably Ekholm next. Sidonian Knight, what's the handsome per 60 on that facial hair? Definitely ranked first. I don't know that this is elite facial hair, but I appreciate the compliment. Would you pair Burakovsky and Pinto for Guenther? Absolutely, I would. No brainer for me. Michael, hey Nate, 10 team Cats League. Goals, assists, shots on goal, hits, power play points. Currently rostering 3D, can go to 4 by dropping a forward. I rotate in from the bench. Would you feel okay swapping Schmaltz or Smith for Jones or Anderson or stay pat? That is an interesting one. I think probably, especially for a week like this, you want to be rostering 4D because there's going to be those 2 super heavy nights where you're not going to be able to get that forward in from the bench. In a setup like this, I think I'm dropping Smith here. And I think I would go for Jones, but Anderson is hot right now. If you want to try to stay in those flames, that's fine. I just think Florida's a much better environment, and it's more likely that Jones keeps up a better baseline of production. Kelly says, thanks, you're the GOAT. Trevster appreciates it. Pug said, would you rather Toffoli or McTavish or Quinn? I'm going to go McTavish there. Sushi, as it seems like Nico Hischier's found his game again, have his underlying numbers picked up as well. Yeah, we mentioned that off the top. You can see it across the top here if you're watching on YouTube. He definitely has. It looks good at the moment. Can you look at Johnston or Marchenko? Both went cold the last 5 games. Yeah, I believe Blake talked about Wyatt Johnston, but we can look at Johnston and Marchenko for a quick moment before we get back into the list here. Marchenko obviously suffered an injury and is not playing tonight, and that Columbus lineup looks very different without him in it, I will say. Johnston has just 1 goal in his last 5 games, 19 minutes average time on ice, 61st individual scoring expected goals for per 60, 15th on ice expected goals for per 60. So good underlyings there for Johnston. Just a little unlucky as of late, I would say. Marchenko 3 assists the last 5, no goals, over 20 minutes a night. 237th in shots per 60 is kind of low for him. 131 individual expected goals for per 60, 68th in on ice expected goals for per 60. So not the best for Marchenko as of late. It's probably fine, but yeah, it's maybe mildly concerning, this little bit of run. And obviously now we're contending with the injury. And then Wyatt Johnston, I would say I have no concerns about based on that. I'm going to have to get a drink in here. I'm getting dry already. Been talking to people all day. All right, we are back. Last comment, and then we'll get back into it. Trade Carlson to get Jack Hughes, a good trade. What about for Aho? This would trading for Jack Hughes to me is basically a proposition around how safe do I think I am to A, make the playoffs, and B, to actually get a bye if there's a bye in your league. If you feel really safe about getting a bye in your league or making the playoffs if there isn't a bye in your league, then I think it's not a bad idea. Just fill your roster from the waiver wire if you think you can outplay everybody in your league for the time that Jack Hughes is away. Jack Hughes is a safer bet to score points rest of season than Leo Carlson. Carlson might be better than Jack Hughes. That's within the range of outcomes, but just locking in that kind of production is definitely the safer move if you can get to the point where Jack Hughes gets back into your lineup without too much damage to your record. All right, we got to get back into the list here. Only got 5 players done the first time, so let's dig in. We made it down to Matt Coronato here, who has 4 goals and 7 points in his last 5 games. 17 minutes average time on ice, 27 shots per 60, 10th individual expected goals for per 60, 83rd in on ice expected goals for per 60. Coronato is kind of emerging as one of the biggest shot merchants in the league, and pucks are finally going in for him, which is fantastic. Honestly, he's kind of driving a huge chunk of that offense there in Calgary at the moment, which is, I mean, not what I expected to see happen. It's pretty exciting from an individual perspective, but it's still Calgary, which is throwing a big damper on this. I think he was wildly unlucky before this, and so it's kind of just the ship righting itself here as we could hopefully expect for him. Rest of season becomes a much more difficult proposition because I do think Calgary gets worse over the course of the season. I think Rasmus Andersson is still going to get traded, and it's obviously not been good for Calgary so far, and it's probably only going to get worse. That being said, Coronato could get some more minutes, which would offset some of the potential issues there. I think I would most likely place him at like a 30 to 35 goal, 55-ish point pace rest of season, with potential for a little bit more if he starts to creep up more towards the 20-minute treatment, if and when they start to trade away some other players. There is also a downside scenario, though, with Coronato, where they trade away a lot of their top players and he's left with no one to play with, and he just can't do it on his own. Mathew Barzal, we touched on a little bit there, has a goal, 2 points in his last 5, over 22 minutes average time on ice, 39th shots per 60, 97th individual expected goals for per 60, 35th on ice expected goals for per 60. He's on a 22 goal, 63 point pace on the season. He has just a 59% IPP, 10.2% on ice shooting percentage. Those things should go up for me. I think he should be a point per game player in this kind of revamped New York Islanders offense. Nikolaj Ehlers, 1 goal, 3 points in his last 5, just over 16.5 minutes. Average time on ice, 211th in shots per 60, but 32nd in shot attempts per 60. So 219th in individual expected goals for per 60. He's just got to hit the net, basically, is what's going on here. He's 78th in on ice expected goals for per 60, but 10th in on ice scoring chances for per 60. Really good underlying numbers yet again for Nikolaj Ehlers. He always has those. He's shooting 6.9% on the season, 58% IPP, 10% on ice shooting percentage. I think there is still some growing pains just going to Carolina, new situation, the Rod Brindamore effect, what have you. I'm not really concerned about this. I think I would still have Ehlers at a 70-point projection with this deployment. I was hoping for more deployment for Ehlers. I thought we might get it since I paid him all that money, but it doesn't seem like we're going to necessarily, at least. There will probably be some stretches throughout the season where he does get up 18 plus minutes due to injury or other reasons. So I think I would probably place Ehlers at a roughly 70-point pace rest of season at this point. Jason Robertson is a fun one. 9 goals, 11 points in his last 5 games. 20 minutes average time on ice. First in both shots per 60 and individual expected goals for per 60. 12th in on ice expected goals for per 60. Everything the man touches lately is turning to gold. He's on a 48 goal, 104 point pace. On the season, he ranks third in shots per 60 and first in individual expected goals for per 60 and first in on ice expected goals for per 60. He is the belle of the ball when it comes to underlying statistics this season is Jason Robertson, and honestly these numbers don't look unsustainable to me at the moment. He's got just under a 64% IPP, 13.5% shooting percentage, 14.8% on ice shooting percentage is a little bit high, but this power play is so good right now that on ice shooting percentage might just stay high all year. Maybe it comes down a little bit, but I think the IPP comes up to kind of counterbalance that. I honestly think that this could be sustainable. We're getting the 20-minute treatment, which was not a guarantee, and as long as he keeps up the underlying stats, which maybe it's wise to bake in a little regression from this incredible pace that he's on currently. But even then, I think we could be looking at a 45 to 50 goal, 90 plus point campaign from Jason Robertson all season long with upside for 100 plus. Zach Hyman has 2 assists in 5 games since returning from injury, is playing 21 plus minutes per night for the Edmonton Oilers. Last game here, he was playing with Adam Henrique and Trent Frederick, which is obviously not ideal, but he is on the top power play. 184th shots per 60, 177 individual expected goals for per 60, and 122 in on-ice expected goals for per 60. Hyman in this current scenario is probably not going to smash. He probably needs exposure to at least one of Draisaitl and or McDavid at even strength to do 60 plus point pace, 30 goal, 60 plus point pace Zachary Hyman that we would hope for. So he needs that, but the minutes are really encouraging. That's suggesting that he doesn't have, a lot of pain that he's playing through or something like that, or they're not worried about any re-aggravation that could happen from playing him too much. So I really like that for Zach Hyman here. And I think that he should get better from here. We often see that players who come back from a long-term injury, it takes them a while. They're entering the season trying to get their footing while everybody else is already in mid-season form, and makes a lot of sense to me that it could take him a while, but the encouraging time on ice is there, and we just need the even strength deployment. And I think in at least, I would say, let's say, 8 of 10 of the remaining games that the Edmonton Oilers play, 80% of the remaining games, that Zach Hyman will be on a line with Draisaitl or McDavid at even strength. All right, Svechnikov next up. 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5, just under 18 minutes a night. 11th in shots per 60, 33rd individual expected goals for per 60, and 39th in on-ice expected goals for per 60. On the season now, it's a 26 goal, 45 point pace. The underlyings look quite good, as they always have with Svechnikov. 8.1% on ice shooting percentage is still low here. That should come up, and we should get Svechnikov more into the 55 plus point range at least, if not a little bit more if this current deployment holds in the 18-minute range. So I do like that for Svechnikov. Obviously, he brings the bangs for your banger leagues, and yeah, as long as he's in this role, I think that's great. The problem is it's Rod Brindamore, and things could go south quickly. He could get down into the bottom six yet again this year, and no one should be shocked if that happens. So as of right now, as long as he's in this spot, as long as he's playing line one, power play one, I am not concerned about this. The underlying stats still look good, but the concern is always going to be what is Rod Brindamore thinking at any given moment. MacKenzie Weegar has no points in his last 5 games, over 22.5 minutes average time on ice. He's 24th in shots per 60 amongst all defensemen in that span, 56th in individual expected goals for per 60, but 189th in on ice expected goals for per 60. So again, you see the team effects coming into play here. The points are just not there for Weegar at the moment. He's not getting top power play. Calgary is showcasing Rasmus Andersson for trade, and he is doing a terrific job of showcasing himself. So that's the current situation. Then you also have the Zane Parekh situation where it sounds like they're going to try to get him healthy for World Juniors, send him there, and then he can come back in the new year. And maybe at that point they have moved on from Rasmus Andersson. Maybe at that point they're accepting that this season is not going to go their way, and they want to get Zane Parekh on top power play for the rest of the year, and it's just Parekh all the way, and Weegar kind of just gets left to pick up the scraps on a bad Calgary offense. That's the dismal scenario for MacKenzie Weegar. The better case scenario is that he does get some power play one time. He's still getting all these minutes. He's still producing the shots himself that he's known for, and that Calgary finds some more offensive juice at some point throughout the season. Maybe they start to play a little bit looser once, they start to inject some youth into the lineup. They start to let go some of the veterans, start to make some trades. That's, to me, a pretty tough outcome to envision at this point in time, and so I am pretty down on MacKenzie Weegar's ability to rebound to any significant extent. He's probably good enough just on the basis of all the peripherals that he brings to be rostered in a lot of points leagues, but he's going to be tough to even hit 30 points on the season if this deployment holds, so you got to take that for what it's worth with MacKenzie Weegar now. Chris Kreider has 2 assists in his last 5 games here. He is about 17.5 minutes average time ice, 229th shots per 60, 163 individual expected goals for per 60, and 90th in on ice expected goals for per 60. And Chris Kreider had a really nice start. Things have tailed off a little bit. It doesn't seem like he's getting those really high danger looks that he was getting once upon a time. He's playing now in the last game on a line with Troy Terry and Mason McTavish. That didn't go terribly, but it didn't go great against Vegas. He's still on that same power play unit as before with Troy Terry and Leo Carlsson and Jackson Lacombe, but they kind of did a bit more of a 1A, 1B situation in this latest game, which has me a little bit concerned. There was only one power play, so that we might have to wait and see what goes on there, and maybe it'll be different next time around. Maybe they will continue to use the Leo Carlsson, Jackson Lacombe unit a lot more, and that would help Kreider. But yeah, I'm a little bit more concerned, definitely, in the last little bit with Chris Kreider than I have been previously. But I'm not necessarily moving on from him yet, because I do think that it's just as likely that he gets pretty hot here in the next little bit. You look ahead, and Anaheim has a perfect schedule, not this week but next, and so I'm probably trying to hang on to him through that. This week you could even bench him. You're going to be benching people on the super heavy Wednesday and Friday this week, so that's going to happen anyway. So just bench him, take the points on your bench if he scores them, and hold on to him for that streamer week next week at the very least. Carter Verhaeghe has just 3 assists in his last 5 games. I did see that he got at least an assist in this game here tonight. Where's the Florida Panthers? Here we are. Carter Verhaeghe has 1 assist so far tonight. They continue to blend the lines there a little bit. Verhaeghe, about 17 minutes average time on ice, 217 shots for 60, 306 individual expected goals for per 60, 36th in on ice expected goals for per 60. It's just been another weird season. I don't really understand what's changed for him so far this year. He's getting on the top power play unit at this point in time, and it just doesn't seem to be helping. He's on an 8-goal, 39-point pace on the season. I think he's much, much better than this, but for some reason, confidence, whatever the case, he can't score and the team can't score when he's on the ice. So it's a concerning development for Verhaeghe. I think at some point in the season he probably does bust a slump and he might even go on a bit of a heater, but I mean, you're just hoping that it happens at this point. There's nothing to really suggest that it's going to immediately. So, yeah, it becomes a situation where even if he does pop off, how long do I have to wait for that pop off to happen? And is it worth waiting and taking all of the useless nights that he's going to give you between now and then? And in a lot of cases, that answer may be no, especially in leagues that aren't super sharp and you can get away with that drop and get somebody on the waiver wire who's actually quite good. If that's your case, then definitely I think you can drop Carter Verhaeghe and not feel too bad about it. So I don't think you need to be too worried about dropping Carter Verhaeghe if you feel that that's the best thing for your squad based on what else is available to you. All right, and then Logan Cooley here is the last one on the list, and we'll finish it out with some more comments. We got 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in the last 5 for Cooley, 18 minutes average time on ice, 195th shots per 60, 290th individual expected goals for per 60. That's not ideal. 144th in on ice expected goals for per 60. As I mentioned, playing on that line with Guenther and Carconi in the last game, and it's a weird situation. They're trying a bunch of stuff with the power play to try to get the power play working, taking Cooley off it, taking Guenther off it. I still believe in Cooley the player. Utah's got to figure some things out as a team here, and I think that will help. But they've got to start playing a lot more cohesively for this to be the pop-off season everybody envisioned for Logan Cooley, including myself. I'm holding on to him unless it's a 10-team league. In a 10-team league, probably you can drop Logan Cooley if there's a hotter, better option that's currently producing on your wire. But in 12-team leagues and above, yeah, I think you have to hang on to Logan Cooley. The upside is too good, in my opinion, still to move on from Logan Cooley unless it's a 10-team or less. Okay, back to the comments. Where did we get to? There's a lot of comments here. Let's find it. All right. Revo Hurst, I'm 6-1 in my league. Would it be unwise to grab Harley and Nichushkin with no room on IR to get good players for later? I wouldn't do both, for sure. I think I struggle to do that, especially this early in the season. A lot can go wrong. You could wind up with 3 more injuries this week to significant players on your team, and then you're dropping them anyway. I think that it might be a smart idea to grab them a little bit ahead of where you think they might be coming back to the lineup, but maybe it's not quite yet. Yeah, you are towing the line there, but with 2 good players like that out there on the wire, then I think you can kind of toe the line, and maybe when the first one goes, you grab the second one or something like that. I definitely don't think you can grab both. I think you probably want to wait. You probably want to wait and grab one as close to when they come back as possible. Sidonian Knight, 12-team banger cats plus face-off wins and Pims. Would you send Jason Robertson for Brady Tkachuk? Ooh. Brady obviously thrives in that scenario. But Robertson is absolutely popping off the shots as well. That's a really tough one. I guess it might come down to where my team is doing well and where my team is hurting. If you need the hits, if you need the Pims, maybe it's worth it to go get Brady Tkachuk there. If you're going to be hurt a lot by losing J-Rob's goals and points, then maybe it's not worth it. It might just come down to kind of your current roster construction and what's more valuable for your specific team. All right, Puckstud, how do you rank these Buffalo forwards when healthy? Norris, Quinn, Benson, Doan, Zucker, McLeod. Yeah, this seems to change for me on a game-to-game basis. I think Josh Norris, when healthy, is probably the number one there. He just does the most things for fantasy. He hits, he shoots, he scores goals. Zach Benson, I think, maybe has a safer role. But I do think that he's probably a bit more of a playmaker than a goal scorer and not a bit as big of a shooter. And so he would be a number two for me there. And then I really like Josh Doan. He seems to just kind of bounce around the lineup a little bit, which is the tough part. But when he's in a good spot, I really do like some Josh Doan. The underlines look really good there. Zucker and Doan are probably close to in a tier for me, and then Quinn and McLeod are behind. Would you take Vladar, Saros, Demko, Bennington, or Wedgwood at net? I have Blackwood as my other goalie. Scoring is 5 for a win, -1 for a loss, -2 for a goal against, 0.5 for a save, 5 for a shutout. Pretty standard stuff in terms of the goalie stats there. From this group, I'm looking for a good environment. I'm looking for a solid situation. I'm not rostering Wedgwood if I have Blackwood. I'm not going to bet against myself that way and take both sides of the tandem. Yeah, I think it might be Vladar actually for me currently. Demko's injury concerns worry me. The situation in Nashville does not look good. The situation in St. Louis does not look good. I think it might be Vladar for me actually. How about Mitch Marner, 150th in fantasy so far? In your settings, he might be 150th. That's fair. Let's see what his underlyings look like the last little bit. Yeah, 2 assists in his last 5. 19 and a half minutes average time on ice. 192 shots per 60. He's not a big shooter. 64th individual expected goals for per 60 is pretty good. On ice expected goals 40. Goals for per 60 is 40th. On an 82-point pace on the season, only 16 goal pace. IPP is kind of low. I think this is somewhat similar to the Ehlers effect that I was talking about. It takes time to learn a new team sometimes. He's a tremendously skilled player. I have no doubt that things will work out. But yeah, you can have some tough times when going to a new team and things just don't come as easily as they have in years past. I think that's it's a reasonable cold streak for Marner. All right, let's get back to the comments. Can you add Brian Rust? Certainly we can do that. Brian Rust, also a little banged up at the moment. No points in his last 5. Have to wonder if that's something that's been going on. Yeah, I'd like to see him come back and be told that he's at full strength again. It's quite possible he was playing through something the last little bit. But yeah, very big cold streak here. And yeah, you don't have to hang on to Brian Rust in some shallower formats for sure. I think he's going to get the deployment when he's there. Because again, it's Pittsburgh and they don't really have a lot of other players to put into power play 1, line 1. Sidney Crosby clearly loves playing alongside him. Yeah, it's concerning for sure. I would probably wait to see what happens with the injury here and then bring him back into the lineup and see where we go from there. I don't think, at least I didn't see, I mean, I've been working all day today, so I haven't quite kept up with everything. It's just an illness, right? It's not actually an injury. So it could be that, he's been dealing with something and it kind of built up and maybe he wasn't feeling well for a while before and that could explain some of it. That's obviously just speculation on my part, but it's possible. So I think I'd wait to see how he comes back when he gets back into the lineup, into the practices and stuff. Give him a couple games after that before I make any big time decisions. Is Ovi a sell high or a hold? We can look at Alex Ovechkin here. He's definitely doing the thing at the moment. I saw he's got at least a assist in this game here today. Yeah, good assist there. But nothing else looks like. So prior to tonight, 6 goals, 8 points in his last 5. 7th in shot attempts per 60, 43rd individual expected goals for per 60, 120th in on ice expected goals for per 60. I think Ovechkin is doing the thing again a little bit. The time on ice is probably not going to be there as much as it has been in years past, but 37 goals, 75-point pace. He's running hot, but a lot of his time on ice comes on the power play where you'd expect him to. Yeah, I think probably 35 goal, 65 to 70-point pace is probably where I'd put him rest of season. So I don't think he's running, obviously in the last little bit he's running hot, but on the season I don't think he's running so far above expectation. All right, I traded Dry and Kemper for Kyle Connor and Tim Stützle. What do you think? I probably want the best player in that deal, which would be Draisaitl, in my opinion. Yeah, in most cases, I'm just taking the best player in the deal with Draisaitl there. Drop Bouillon for Anderson. Yeah, I think I would at this point. Point and Perek for Boldy in a keeper league. If you've got a big weight for shots or it's more of a peripheral space league, then I could see that. Would you drop Verhaeghe personally right now? I said my piece about Verhaeghe. It would really depend on my team in the situation, who's available to pick up, how deep the league is. But yeah, I tried to give some general guidelines. 10-team league, definitely. 12-team league, more dependent on what else I have going on. Can you talk about Fiala? Certainly we can. Add Kevin Fiala to the list. 1 goal, 3 points in his last 5. Over 20.5 minutes average time on ice, 116th shots per 60, 43rd individual expected scoring chances for per 60, 109th in individual expected goals for per 60, 48th in on ice expected goals for per 60. Really good underlying numbers for Fiala there. On the season, the on ice shooting percentage is quite low. You could expect that to get a little bit better, and you could see him in that 35 goal, 70-point pace rather than the 34 goal, 60-point pace he's currently on. Yeah, I don't know that's going to get so much better for Fiala to like a point per game pace, but I do think it gets better from here on out. Throat's getting dry. Have to clear it more and more often, but we're getting to the end here. Let's see what we've got. Boldy for Marner. Boldy for Marner. If it was more of a points only format, then I might consider it, but if you've got a decent weight for shots, then I'm probably holding Boldy there. It's just one of those, honestly, this Boldy for Marner question, do I really think I'm winning by enough that this trade is worth doing? I just have not a lot of interest in doing trades that I don't think I'm conclusively winning. And that's a trade that, it would be hard to conclusively win, I think. Drop Stolars for Hart. I have Binnington, Van Melka, Dobish, Comrie. That's a lot of goalies. I think I would drop Dobish first for sure before dropping Stolars, unless he's not in an IR spot. I guess maybe he's not in an IR spot. Might need some more context on that one. But yeah, I think Stolars can be better. The Leafs have to get better. The defense has to get healthy. A lot of things have to happen, and he will be in more of a timeshare with Joseph Woll, but I think that's where he excels and where he was the best for you last year if you had him last year. So yeah, I think you got to see that first. Raymond for Marner. Again, it's a situation where I'm not certain that I'm winning. Marner maybe has a higher upside, so if you want to take a bigger swing on that upside, I guess you could think of it that way. But yeah, it's a deal where I'm wondering how much I'm winning by, even if I'm winning. What do you think of Dougie Hamilton? No points in the last 6 games. Can he hold the power play? That, honestly, your guess is as good as mine. That one, I feel like I have less and less of a read on with every game that passes, to be honest with you. It would make sense to me for him to lose the power play. It hasn't happened yet. What do we think about Zegras? Let's throw Trevor Zegras in here. and see what we've got. 5 points, 3 goals in his last 5, 18.5 minutes. Average time on ice, 22nd shots per 60, 15th individual expected goals for per 60, 34th on ice expected goals for per 60. He's on a 29 goal, 86 point pace. He's run a little bit hot to get there. 81% IPP, 14.1% on ice shooting percentage. So yeah, I think he's probably more of a 70-point player than an 86-point player, but underlyings look real good at the moment. He's getting the deployment. He's a Talkit favorite by all accounts. I think Trevor Zegras is here to stay in your lineup. And it looks like the last comment here. What happened to my boy Jake Wallman? Had a hot start, fell off a cliff before landing on the third pairing, now out. Yeah, I don't know the Wallman situation, if he maybe was dealing with something prior and is only now kind of being forced to come out of the lineup because it kind of devolved to a point where he had to come out of the lineup. I think that that's a real possibility. So I'm not going to, like, Edmonton as a team was not performing very well. I think their struggles were well documented. That obviously is going to affect a defenseman like Wallman, who is to a large extent dependent on how well the team is doing for his fantasy relevance. So I'm not going to hold it against him too badly. It was tough to see the shots really fall off. I want to see what happens when he comes back. Hopefully he's healthy. I want to give him, 3 to 4 games at least before I make a big decision on dropping him, because I do really think that Wallman, in a lot of spots, especially leagues that have a big weight for shots, that have a big weight for blocks, he can be a guy who's quite relevant in that situation. So that's something that I still want to see what will happen when he gets back. All right, this is the last one. Best kept secret. Best kept secret. Last one. Would you trade Fox for? I think that's supposed to be Darlene. It says Darlin, which is an amusing slip there. But would you trade Fox for Darlene? In a pure points league, maybe not. But in pretty much every other scenario, yes, I would go for Rasmus Dahlin. All right, I think we did it. We reached the end. I survived, even on little sleep and a very dry throat. So thanks to everybody who joined me on the live stream here. For those who are patron members, you're going to be able to go into the Discord, and Blake has posted a link for the patron-only live stream, which is happening a little bit later on. If you aren't able to stick around to catch that, then you will be able to find the link. It'll be posted on Patreon, and it's posted already in Discord, so you'll be able to watch it after the fact if you aren't able to watch it live here tonight. But if you are able to watch it live, then go and talk to Blake and get his input, ask him questions, pick his brain. He's going to have some good stuff for you on waiver wire process. But I think that is going to be all that I've got for this episode. So hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. And all the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick and 18 Skaters. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for supplying the music for the podcast. That's it, folks. Much love.